Hello, and welcome to the Slow Ready Podcast, a casual drive into the music and culture of Goose. I'm Alex.
And I'm Mike.
And we are back after way too long of a break to recap an incredible Goosemas weekend. Awesome weekend in North Charleston. But before we get started here, just want to make sure we plug our socials at Slow Ready Pod, anywhere you're on the social media. The soon-to-be banned TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, Blue Sky. That's our new favorite platform, I think. So come check us out and chat with us. We'd love to talk. And before we get into the main topic, we have a few news and notes in our segment we like to call Hot Tea. So not sure where exactly to start here, but we just had Goosemas, and the bingo winners who got a straight line were entered into the chance to win a few unreleased recordings from some rehearsal sessions and just outstanding stuff, like getting a second TED tapes this year. 9 tracks in total released. I love the 726 jam that was on there. I hope to see that at a show. Mike, what you think about this?
Yeah, it was awesome. I was one of the lucky people that got a line on bingo. So I had these recordings downloaded a couple days ago, spent a bit of time with them. They're all really, really great stuff. The opening jam one particularly stuck out to me because it's very similar to what they ended up doing for the improv during the Madhuvan in Pittsburgh, which I was at. So that was really neat. Also really love that Thatch Fuzz jam they've got on there. But yeah, lots of good stuff. Definitely like a bonus TED tapes, like Alex said. That's like right on the money. So yeah, if you get a chance, I believe the AAT guys set up a folder where you can actually download these. So it's a great resource, and I'm sure we're all going to be listening to them for quite some time now.
Yeah, our friends at Always Almost There, they put up a link on Google Drive to download the tapes. We're going to share that in the show doc here, I think. So y'all can listen too, because let's share the love in the community. And then the second bit of news this week, after kind of a mess at the Goosemas lineup pre-show, they announced a new TED VIP and Super TED VIP entry system for the GA floor tickets. Now, for each tier of VIP, there's going to be a separate line where you can check in 90 minutes before the doors to get a numbered wristband. And a certain amount of time before the doors open, it wasn't announced in the email that was sent out. A number will be drawn from the wristband numbers. So let's say 200 wristbands were handed out. I don't know how many are handed out every show. A random number between 1 and 200 will be drawn, and whoever has that number, let's say it's 50, will be the first one in line. So wristband 50 will go, and then 51, 52, etc. And then because of the 2 separate tiers, Super TED will go in first, and then TED will go in second. We see other bands like Fish and DMB do this. So any thoughts on this, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, we've been in these scenes for a long time, and it's definitely been a popular way to kind of resolve some of the issues that come around this. I think most bands and most fans would like everyone to get a chance equally to get up front. And so I think this is mainly to rectify, some people that are always up front and other people not getting a chance. But I will also say that I anticipate, just based on what I've seen when other bands implement a strategy like this, there will probably take a little while to get the kinks worked out. So I'm glad that they're doing it, but I imagine it's going to take some time to get it to be smooth.
Yeah. There's always a few hiccups there, but it is nice to have a more equal system for people to have the chance to be up front and center. Not everyone has the opportunity to be able to line up all day or anything like that. So I'm a fan of the system. It's wound up working out pretty good, in my opinion, from where I've seen it. I mean, otherwise, people have work and stuff on show days. It's just tough to get out there and line up.
Yeah, I totally agree.
And then the last bit of news was an awesome bit of news that we kind of knew about through the grapevine, but was officially announced by Goose. Rick was invited to perform at the Kennedy Center Honors, in particular to celebrate the lifetime achievements of the Grateful Dead. So that will be airing today as we record on Sunday, the 22nd at 8:30 p.m. Obviously, you'll be hearing this after that, so hopefully you had a chance to watch. But this is one of the biggest honors you can get as an artist in any of the performing arts. Especially rare for it to be given to a band. Usually it's, certain individuals, like one of my favorites, Willie Nelson, was given the honor years ago. But Rick will be up there performing. He's mostly playing guitar, but he'll be up there with folks like Sturgill Simpson, Susan Tedeschi, Dave Matthews. So going to be an awesome thing to watch. Really looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm really excited to watch this as well. I think Derek Trucks is also there. Tons of celebrities. They're also honoring, I think, Francis Ford Coppola. So So yeah, really cool event. I can't even imagine how honored Rick must have felt getting selected for this. So cannot wait to watch him in action. And there's a ton of people here that I was shocked all these celebrities also are big Dead fans. So really cool to see that as well.
Well, it helps that on this Sunday, both of our football teams are absolute trash. We're both competing for the number one pick in the NFL draft, the Giants and the Raiders. So we don't really have to watch anything on Sundays anymore.
So what Alex is saying is me and him have a lot of free time on Sundays. So yeah.
Yes, we do. So with that, let's get into the flow down and talk some Goosemas. And I thought it would be great to start with night zero because there was two amazing events put on that unfortunately I couldn't make it to either. Mike had the chance to make it to one, but we'll start with the one that we both couldn't go to just real quick. Goose put on a night zero official pre-party at Holy City Brewing. They had an official beer release that they did for Goosemas, the Free Space Session IPA. I had a chance to try it in the venue because they asked the extras over there at the venue, and it was awesome. And at this event, they played some bingo. Cam Hurt was hosting it, so doing his comedy thing while playing some bingo with your friends. Pretty great. And there was also a surprise early merch drop here with exclusive stuff for this event. So there's a couple shirts by Rising Tides Art Studio and Cats Under the Stitch. And this went on from 4 to 8 p.m. Looked like a great time. Seems like everyone who was there was just raving about it.
Yeah, I unfortunately didn't get to go to the one at Holy City Brewing. When that started was right around the time that I was leaving Charlotte with my dad to head down to Charleston. But we did have some friends that were there. They all said it was an amazing time. Everyone got the limited edition beer, the 4 packs that they were giving out. Everyone said that Mr. Cam was hilarious and it was a ton of fun. So it sounds like it was a really amazing time. If I could have gotten off work earlier, I would have certainly been there. But lucky enough to go to the other Night Zero event, which we'll talk about here in a second.
Yeah, so let's get into it. We had shuttles provided, thankfully, between the two events, and people were lucky enough to get on those shuttles and go to the other Night Zero event at the Charleston Poorhouse right afterwards, put on by WTED Radio. And all the events of this were benefiting the Conscious Alliance, another event hosted by Cam Hurt here. And it was a disco and the Night Zero band featuring our buddy Ryan Storm. Mike Morosky also playing from Jam Band Jovi. Looked like an awesome time. You could watch the stream on WTED. They had a stream going on Twitch. Unfortunately, there was some audio issues there, but I still tuned in to try to check it out and listen between the hiccups. But it was awesome. It looked like a great time. And you were there, Mike. So why don't you give us a little more insight on what was going on at Disco?
Yeah, it was a really cool event. Definitely one of the better things that I've been to this year. It's kind of a hole in the wall bar. It's like the style of it, but it's actually pretty big space. The got there around 9:45, so apparently I walked in shortly after Mr. Cam had done his stand-up routine, so missed that, which was unfortunate. But the Night Zero band was on stage when I walked in the venue, so that was really cool. I'm a big fan of Ryan Storm. I've been listening to AAT for the last 2 to 3 years. I read his Substack pretty much religiously, so getting to see him perform live was very, very cool to me. A lot of me and Alex's friends were there out on the patio. Got to see pretty much all of Disco's set, and they are absolutely outstanding. I've listened to them before, but now a bunch of their songs are on my playlist, so that was epic. And they had a really cool Conscious Alliance table set up where you could buy like the poster in advance and also just, available for donations. The whole thing was just really cool start to finish. And it's really neat to see the Goose community thriving this way.
Yeah, it sounded like an incredible event. I had the chance to chat with people who were there, along with you, Mike, and just want to shout out our good friends at the Flock Talk with the Femme Flock podcast. They did a preview episode for this event, and you can get some more insight on all the inner workings that went together. They also chatted with the guys from Disco. Seemed like a cool bunch of dudes. So definitely worth checking that out. And it's a great podcast, so highly suggest you listen. But let's get into the shows here, huh?
Let's do it. So much to talk about.
Yeah, so night one approached December 13th, 2024. There were some rumblings before the show about what the set might look like and that it was pretty impressive. But, once the doors opened and we went in, what did your routine look like there, Mike? What was getting in like for you?
Yeah, getting in was pretty breezy. We walked over our hotel to walkway to the venue, which was pretty convenient. And this was my dad's first jam band show ever. So, I was a little bit nervous about what he might think. He's been to a handful of Dave's shows with me, which is not really a jam band. So I was a little bit nervous about how he'd react to everything, but we got in within like 5 minutes, at around 7:15 because we walked over late, and we found a spot up in 220, which is like pretty much dead center on the second level. Really good place to take in all of Getty's magic, and got to see this amazing stage setup, which as soon as you saw like the actual bingo setup, I started getting really, really excited because they put a lot of time and effort clearly into making that stage look as unbelievable as it did. So yeah, it was a way better experience than getting into Hampton last year. I will definitely say that, because if you were there at Goosemas last year, it was like borderline assault at the gates. It felt like I was in a war in Lord of the Rings or something. So this was a much better experience overall.
Well, I will say we lined up a little bit early. Our hotel was right across the street from the venue, so it was like a 4-second walk across the street or whatever it takes to walk across 4 lanes of traffic. And it was kind of a mess in terms of figuring out where to go night one. There wasn't like great signage. Like the floor people had to go to a specific line. The Super Ted folks were in a specific line. The VIP were in a specific line, and it wasn't really like great labeling. But once we got in, fantastic. The floor was super crowded, but it's not always a bad thing. That means Goose is growing some momentum, and it's hard to move around, but awesome to see the fan base growing like that. And yeah, you mentioned it. The light setup by Getty was just insanity. So normally this year we've seen the 3 square light setup on stage. There were 5 up there now. And then there was a giant diamond in the center of lights that like was just incredible. Like it was hard to not look at that all night when you were watching. And that's not even including the crazy bingo setup that was put up on stage. 70s style bingo game show vibes up there, with a giant bingo sign that was also controlled by Getty, with just like the old school, like incandescent, what maybe that's the word, I don't know what they're called, light bulbs kind of thing. And it was awesome. And a giant bingo wheel in the middle with children's bouncy balls as bingo balls, essentially, like the giant ones that you see at Walmart or Target or whatever. Yeah. So just walking in, it was like, holy crap, this is a crazy set. And seeing that it was a practical set versus like something that could have just been done on screens or something was just really, really cool to see.
Yeah, when Goose goes in on a theme, they fully sell out, which is one of the many things I appreciate them. Getty also, I don't think he used it very much of the show, but where we were sitting, we were like right up against it. So like behind the diamond, like at the very back of the arena, there was like line of a flat line of lights that he used only at certain periods where things were getting really particularly crazy. So you're totally right. This light setup was just absolutely blown up to the max. And just also, I didn't really learn about the issues you floor people were having until night 2 as far as the wristband scenario. But I definitely found out on night 2 because I had tickets to the floor and the upper, so I had options. But I didn't try and get a wristband on night 1. And let me tell you, trying to get a wristband on night 2, I felt so terrible for all of you on the floor, because that seemed like a clusterfuck of a mess.
It was, especially night 1. Night 2 was a little better once you knew where to go. But if you didn't know where to go, like you were telling me, yeah, not great. But before we get into the show, sorry, this is a lot of lead up, but there was a lot going on here. I wanted to talk about the guys came out in costumes. So we had Lucky Lou hosting, who was incredible. I want more Lucky Lou content and more appearances. Like surprise appearances would be great. But then the guys came out in their fits, and I wanted to talk through what we thought of each one, if you're cool with that, Mike. So
Sure.
let's start with Rick. Like, what'd you think of his vibe? Who do you think he was trying to look like? Do you have any thoughts on that?
So I've obviously, like I'm sure many of you have been reading online what people's theories were on the outfits and all of that. I think that there was the thing I saw most commonly repeated was that Rick was Bob Dylan, or not Bob Dylan, but Bob Seger, which would make sense given that they cover Hollywood Nights. And then I had heard Peter was Sonny from Sonny and Cher. Uh,
Okay, I was
but
getting
I
George Harrison. I was getting
okay,
George Harrison
okay,
vibes.
I could see that for sure.
Yeah.
Could see that for sure. But the other ones, I don't really know, like exactly. I didn't see any like comments on what they were going for. So I'd be curious to hear like what you've seen or what your thoughts were.
Yeah, so I chatted with the AAT guys a little bit about this and with some friends about this. So definitely hear you on the Rick Bob Seger thing. Although he was kind of doing like the Robert Plant like open shirt deal too. So although he doesn't really look like Robert Plant, but anyway, definitely George Harrison for Peter. Definitely rocking that. Cotter, I have no idea who he was. He looked like one of the Village people or something, but the mutton chops were amazing. And then Jeff looked like Dickie Betts to me, kind of. Like he was kind of doing his own thing, but Dickie Betts vibes.
I could see that.
And then Trevor, no idea what Trevor was supposed to be, but the perm, the curls, just that was the highlight of all the outfits for me. And I was lucky enough to go on AAT for their post night one show, and we were trying to come up with a nickname for the perm, and we came up with the Terry Alfredo drip. So what do we think about that?
I love it. I think you could also make an argument that Trev was going for like a Rick James thing almost. It's kind of
Okay,
like
yeah.
was like similar vibe. And I actually agree. Like I didn't really have this as like a guess, but when you said Cotter looks like someone from the Village People, that was the only thing that I could plausibly think that he looked like. So you may be spot on with that one.
Yeah, that's what I thought. But either
I
way,
agree.
seeing them all of them in their outfits was just amazing. And
Incredible.
they, like you said, they go all in when they have a theme, and they absolutely nailed it this time. But let's get into the shows. So Lucky Lou comes out, introduces us to the Funky Few, and says they're going to come out in a second. And we'll run through set by set, I guess, here, because there's a lot to talk about. So the band opens up with set one with Sirius by the Alan Parsons Project. Awesome to see. And then Yeti, Butter Rum, Arcadia. We get a short interlude for The King. And then Turbulence in the Night Rays and Silver Rising. So let's start with Sirius. We're both 90s kids. What'd you think about that opening up the show?
Yeah, just the absolute greatest way to open a show. I don't think I'll ever see anything better. I was born in 87, so I was alive for the Jordan heyday, and I like was expecting to hear 6-6 from North Carolina because I'm just programmed to when I hear Sirius, that's the next thing that you hear. So it was very, very cool. Great way to set the table. My dad lost his mind. He thought it was the coolest thing ever. So yeah, just beautiful start to this evening. What about you?
Yeah, super unexpected because the theme had been like 1975, and I think of like the 90s Bulls for that. The song was a little older than I thought, but it's still from the 80s as far as I know. So they just felt like playing it. And worth noting, on if you listen on Nugs or whatever, it's labeled as Da Bulls. So the guys knew what they were doing there.
Which is perfect.
Absolutely perfect. But then the wheel starts spinning, and the bingo balls are starting to get drawn. And the first ball gets pulled, and it's Yeti. I mean, how do you get more perfect than that for Goosemas? They're talking about Christmas themes and Yeti, like, forget about it. So what'd you think about this Yeti to start things off, Mike?
Well, Yeti is always an awesome opener, so that's just a great way to start, especially coming off the energy of Sirius, because they really kind of played around with Sirius for a minute or two. I don't think that there was anything like super noteworthy about this Yeti. It was a pretty standard version, in my opinion, anyways. But yeah, great way to get the energy going right from the beginning.
Yeah, it was kind of like an older Yeti in a lot of ways, but they definitely were hitting on those 70s disco vibes early, in my opinion. And it was kind of nice to see them just jam out a Yeti versus trying to do a segue and seeing that they're going to mix it up like that. Because I'd seen a lot of complaints handling all the social stuff on X, especially, and Reddit. Like, people were tired after 2 or 3 times of them doing the pumped up kicks thing, even though I love it. So it was nice to see that. And it started off that trend again of like kind of the funk. They were bringing the funk, bringing the disco all night. So, hard stop after this Yeti, and then they pull another ball. Lucky Lou comes out, and it's Butter Rum. And wow, this was a different Butter Rum, in my opinion. One of those where it was just a sudden departure into like this speed funk space. Definitely some disco influence in there. A lot of unexpected turns on this jam. And it was really going places. And then Rick just hits that ripcord to pull it out after like 10 minutes or whatever of jamming. And it's like, oh my gosh, this was going places. But whenever there's a jam with Peter on Clav City, it's a good time as far as I'm concerned. Just really wish it went longer because it was really going places. But I understand the need to keep bingo moving. What'd you think about this Butter Rum there, Mike?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. This butter rum was sick. They accomplished so much in 14 minutes of time. Like, don't let the timestamp fool you because they did a lot in that time. It was really fun as it usually is, but it kind of morphs into almost what felt like a Feel It Now jam to me a little bit. It was a little bit more on like the electronic industrial rhythm feel, that you sometimes get from that type of jam. Not like quite like Kraftwerk or anything like that, although there's something later in the show that I'll get to that does remind me of that. But yeah, it's just I wasn't expecting at Goosemas the improv to be the main star, and I don't think that necessarily it was for this whole weekend, but I was a little bit surprised by how many examples of songs like this that we had where, it's like 12 to 14 minutes long, but what they do in that time is so different and breaking away from the previous tried and true formulas that they use that it kept a lot of these songs refreshed and almost like newly minted.
Yeah, lots of new ideas explored in a lot of these jams, and like you said, you don't necessarily expect a lot of long jamming from Bingo when they're trying to play as many songs as they can and hit some of the surprises and all of that. But they really struck a great balance, I think, between adding some jams, good vibes, and then also hitting some of like the gimmicks and trying to hit cool transitions and things like that. So I thought it was just a really well done production, and we'll probably gush on that more as we talk. But we draw another ball here, another hard stop, and we get Arcadia early. I mean, this is just what you want out of Bingo starting off this show. It's just unexpected slotting, great songs and weird spots. And boy, was this an Arcadia. What'd you think about this one, Mike?
Yeah, so funny story. I actually wanted to use the bathroom before the show started, but the lines were so insane that I was trying to pick my spot. I actually used this time to take my bathroom break because I knew everyone was going to stay
Oh,
inside for Arcadia.
God.
And I knew that because everyone was going to be in there, I could get to the bathroom and get back before the jam started. And I just like everyone to know that I accomplished my mission here. So,
Good.
but I do want to get into this jam because I know that you and I both feel the same way about it. This is the best Arcadia in years. Like, this
Yep.
Arcadia is everything that you want and then some. I feel like we've been waiting for one at this level for a very long time. It started, funky as it typically does, but Peter keeps shifting up the clav to the higher notes. And by the time he gets to the end of the keys, I don't think I've ever heard him spend as much time as he did on like the almost like so high that it's like shrieking or piercing on the clav. But then they just kind of like him and Rick almost jump out of it like simultaneously. I've listened to it like 10 or 12 times. It doesn't feel like either one of them is leading on their own. It seems like it's like they simultaneously move together. And then it moves into like kind of like what would almost be like an older style Hunger Site jam or like, Allman Brothers jammy vibes. So very different space for Arcadia to be in. And I am absolutely here for it.
Yeah, that descending riff you talked about that Peter latched onto and then just allowed for Rick to do this amazing emotional kind of bluesy soloing in a lot of ways. Very Allman Brothers. That was a really good reference you made there. Just outstanding. And then halfway through that, Peter just hops on the vintage vibe and goes into this loose, fluid, spacey transition to get us to the outro that just rips as always. And you said it, but in the moment at the post show recap with the AAT guys, they were talking and they were saying this might be the best version since the Mission Ballroom. And at first I'm like, oh my God, that's super hasty. And then you think about it and you're like, oh yeah, that's probably not far off. Maybe there's a version or two in there, but I can't think of them off the top of my head. So it's been a while since we've gotten an Arcadia that really made you feel the range of emotions that this one did in the jamming, and it really explored some really cool places. Even though it's 17 minutes long, to your point earlier, explored a lot of cool territory and kind of was the theme of the weekend and compact jams that went places that you wouldn't expect.
Yeah, definitely agree. And I think that they kind of like did the best that they possibly could for us because if the improv and the jamming is going to be reduced in total time, then to make it feel as worthwhile, you've got to make that time that you do have really count. And I feel like Goose just absolutely nailed it in terms of that. Like whatever amount of time they had allocated for a song, they took it to as new and fresh of a place as they possibly could. So it's nice that the most well-known song in their catalog got to finally branch out and do something different for the first time in a while.
Yeah, for sure. Just terrific. I've listened to that probably, I won't say the most. I've listened to everything the most, I feel like, but I've listened to this Arcadia a lot. especially in prep for this episode, because I was just so excited to gush about it. And it's really grown on me as one of the highlights of the entire weekend. But we close out set one here with the King. So Rick went on the mic and he said, "Oh, we have the Kings coming into town." And lo and behold, Naveed shows up in a dunk tank wearing a crown. And what the hell was going on here? I don't think this really hit for me. I mean, it was funny to see Naveed up there. But what do you think? Like, how do you think this came to fruition?
I was honestly going to ask you. I'm actually a little bit like pleasantly surprised and pleased that you were also a little bit like, what the hell is going on here? Because at least for us, especially the people in the uppers, I saw a lot of people like turning and whispering to each other. I think all of us were kind of just genuinely confused. I mean, don't get me wrong. I was super happy and stoked to see Naveed up there because I've been fortunate enough to chat with him a few times and he's just like the coolest dude ever. But like, I don't really know what the purpose was or the story was behind it. And I've seen a lot of people online saying like that this was the gag that hit the least for them, and I think I would probably be in that camp as well. Not that it was like necessarily a bad gag, I just don't necessarily understand the premise or what it was.
Well, the King kind of riff was one of the songs on the released rehearsal tapes. So there was something that they had put together a while ago, maybe, or maybe it was just within the last few weeks. I will say Mr. Cam throws a horrible fastball. It went like right into the ground. It would have been like one of the worst first pitches of all time if it was on Sports Center. But he made fun of himself. So shout out to Mr. Cam. Love everything you do, but let's just avoid the fastballs in the future here, buddy. And yeah, I don't think it really hit. I think just the guys on stage wanted to see crew members that they like just get wet. I don't know. And I was speculating like maybe it was after the bus wash incident that they just like liked seeing Naveed get wet or hearing that story or whatever, and they just were like, let's do a dunk tank. Who knows?
Either way, I will say they've got to, if they're doing this again or some variation of it, they've got to get a better dunk tank because even when the ball started hitting the button, it still wasn't dropping. So then they were forced to just run up and hit it with their hands. So we've got to get
Oh
a
god.
dunk tank quality involved at some point for the next one.
Yeah, I mean everything was a quality production except for that dunk tank apparently. Let's move on here because
Yeah.
like you said, the dunk tank was just like bizarre and didn't really
Yeah.
hit for anybody except the people on stage, I don't think. We close out set one with Turbulence in the Night Rays and Silver Rising, both songs that don't necessarily get a lot of improv or anything like that, but both great tunes. Awesome way to close out a set. I thought these both had a little bit of extra mustard on them in terms of Rick soloing, but otherwise just pretty standard stuff. Any thoughts on these two, Mike?
Yeah, it struck me during Turbulence that that's never on my wish list going into a show, but every time I hear it, I'm like genuinely pleased and grateful that I did. So I think that's just kind of a testament to how deep this songwriting in the catalog is. But specifically, just want to call out that this Silver Rising, it always feels to me like it's an epic moment when you have it at a concert. It just feels like it's on a very big scale. And I felt like this one was even bigger. It definitely had so much more juice or sauce or whatever you want to call it when we got to like the epic peak out of the vocal, overlapping epic moment that happens near the end of this song. So I thought it had a ton of juice on it, and it was a really cool epic way to close set one and set the table for set two.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily think of a Silver Rising closer, but it was an awesome way to close out the set. And that first set flew by. Like I looked at my watch and I was like, oh, it's a shorter set one, but it still was 70 minutes. Like flew by. So set break was about half an hour, and then we get into set two here. First ball gets pulled. Hot Love and the Lazy Poet opener. Like the balls were working in the band's favor in terms of pretty good slotting for these power slots here. Great way to open the show. And then we get a Give It Time, Mr. Action, Hunger Sight, Into Flowdown, 726, Cashmere, Into the Mist, and then close out the set with Big Modern. And then in the encore, we got a Same Old Shenanigans, Seekers on the Ridge, Part 1 and Part 2. And then they closed with what's noted as Dawn, but I really feel like it's SOS and then Dawn. Like it's a little bit of both. So where we want to start here? Hot Love, Give It Time, Mr. Action, 3 shorter tunes to start off the set. Great time. It felt like a little bit like a set one run there, but hey, I'll take it because this was like a 2-hour set too.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to start. Just those first three sing-alongs, "Hot Love," "Give It Time," "Mr. Action," all fairly short. Most of them, aren't going to get like improv'd out, or at least not to this point. But this was kind of proof to me that this is not rigged at all. It's definitely the bingo balls. I don't think that these were a bad three songs to set off set two, but I don't necessarily think that the band would, in ordinary shows, structure it this way, just having, three 7-minute songs in a row. But super fun. And I know we say this a lot, but Mr. Action, it never gets taken for a walk, but it's got so much fire and intensity in the solo on that song, way more than most of the songs in the catalog. It always just takes it like above a 10. And I would like to see Mr. Action get stretched out here at some point.
Yeah, I think that that's a song that could be taken for a ride sometime, and I'm surprised it really hasn't been, especially not lately. But I think, high energy opening run. Yeah, shorter songs. You're not getting jams, but "Give It Time" is my wife's favorite, and the bingo ball landed like two people in front of us, which was awesome. And the moment is like, oh, that would have been so cool if we caught that. But then it's like, I have to carry this giant bingo ball around all night, and how the hell do I like deal with this thing all weekend if I wanted to like to keep the memento or whatever? But the guy in front of us was super pumped. He was like holding it up during the song and like singing along, and then like the rest of the show he was like stuffing it in his hoodie, having like the big bingo ball belly kind of deal and just bobbing around. It was pretty entertaining to watch him. um but anyway, great vibes to start off the set, and then we pull Hunger Sight, which I think got the biggest cheer of the night. I don't know if you think that too, Mike.
Yeah, I think I've said that before on one of our other episodes, but I genuinely believe that out of all the like crowd pops you can hear, Hunger Sight usually gets the biggest crowd pop. It's pretty special how much joy the building turns into when Hunger Sight's starting.
Yeah, and for me, this was by far and away the highlight of night one. Just a really self-aware, introspective, slow build jam. It's almost like they knew they wanted to do this if they played Hunger Sight. It was just so perfect. And these deliberate, slow, sustained runs by Pete that slowly layer on top of each other while Rick's doing this bluesy riffing, and Cotter's driving the slow crescendo the whole way until we hit the peak with like about 3 or 4 minutes left in the song. Just an absolute masterclass in a slow, full band jam. Seeing the guys interplay, take turns, kind of driving the jam and the new layering on top of each other. It was kind of interplay between Rick, Peter, and Trev the whole way. And you can kind of see them slowly building this jam brick by brick, layer by layer. And eventually it just explodes and you're like, holy crap, how did we get here? Even though you saw every step of the way being built like clear as day in front of you. So I could gush about this. This is probably my most listened to track from night one. What do you think, Mike? Because I could gush about this for way too long and not say anything.
Well, I probably am going to gush here for a second because this is my highlight from the whole weekend, and I think it's unequivocally a jam of the year candidate. It's absolutely outstanding, and I don't think that this band could have played this jam, even maybe 3 or 4 months ago. But that's just a tribute to how much they've leveled up and how much their chemistry keeps growing. But it's funny, Hunger Sight, we've talked before, it's been kind of furious the last couple months. It's been taken on an angry edge. This was not that. It built primarily around a 3-chord progression from Peter, but I'm just going to say this to the people that have hated on it from that perspective, that it's a 3-chord progression. He's doing tons of other stuff with his other hand. He keeps layering on the ambient sounds, like you said, and eventually moves into that rhythmic piano that he's been using a lot this year. And it's some of my favorite melodic playing from Trevor on bass. And, what you said was absolutely perfect. There's so much patience in this jam. Like every minute, a little bit more gets added on until, you blink, 7 minutes have gone by and you're like, I don't even remember. I can't even see the roadmap for how we ended up in this place, but easily the most listened to thing from the weekend for me. And I have to think about it, but it might be like my only jam of the year contender from the whole weekend.
I have one more, I think, for me. But yeah, terrific stuff.
I'll be curious to hear what that is.
This is the kind of thing that got introduced and brought to this band when Cotter joined. This is not something we saw previously, and much love to the previous eras, but this is very exciting to see where these jams can go. This is just year one with Cotter. Like, I can't even imagine this places will go in the future here. But just terrific stuff. And during that peak, to close out Hunger Sight, the light comes on, a ball needs to be drawn, and we're going to get the first transition of the night. Everything had been a hard stop up to this point. And lo and behold, we get Flow Down, which you can listen back and you can actually hear the people like kind of groaning. I like Flow Down. It's short and it's fun, and you can get down for a few minutes. But really cool transition to this Flow Down. Like it was surprising that this was the first transition of the night, considering how good they've been with these all fall. But yeah, high energy, nice reset after that mind-blowing Hunger Sight jam. Any thoughts on Flow Down and the transition getting into it?
Yeah, so I don't think Flowdown would have been my pick here if we were just like actually making a set list. I don't know that that was exactly what I would have done after Hunger Sight. That being said, it gave me the opportunity to hear this cool transition that you were talking about, because that part was absolutely flawless. It was amazing how gradually they moved it over into the new song. And, you know, because they can't like rehearse the order that these bingo balls are going to come out in, it was even more impressive that just like on the spot they're like, okay, we can ad lib this, we can gradually move into Flow Down. So that was thrilling on its own. So I'm not going to be mad that Flow Down was played, but just from a flow perspective, maybe not be the first thing that would have popped in your mind right after hearing one of the greatest jams ever.
Yeah, and kind of more evidence to like that. I don't see how these balls were rigged, especially with thinking about it with there being like a contest and prizes. Like think about the shitstorm that would have caused if someone found out that it's like, oh yeah, these were rigged, because there's like monetary prizes involved. But we get Flow Down and then 726 cool down after kind of a high energy peak from that Hunger Sight, and then Flow Down's always kind of high energy in its own way. And what I'm wondering is why the hell did so many people leave the floor during 726? Because the song's absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, much needed cool down. 726 is gorgeous, but it gave me a chance to sit down, and it was actually really cool because, like I said, this was my dad's first jam band show, and I finally got a chance to ask him, what did you think of that Hunger Sight? Because I know for a fact he's never seen a jam like that in person. So he looked at me and said, I don't even know what I just saw. So we both got to get a much needed breather after that crazy Hunger Sight and Flow Down, but I wasn't on the floor. Disappointed to hear that people were leaving, because I can't imagine leaving during one of the most gorgeous songs in the catalog.
Yeah, and the bingo balls, you could kind of figure out what the main songs were on there based off of people sharing their bingo boards before the show, which in its own way is kind of like takes away from like the surprise luster or whatever of the shows. But there's only like a handful of kind of rarities, and 726 was one of them. So it kind of surprised me people were just walking off the floor during it. And it's short, but either way, we come back and ramp the energy up right away. Ball gets pulled after 726. We get Cashmere on the ball. First surprise of the night besides Sirius to open things up. And holy shit, Nico Delisa, I hope I pronounced that right. She comes on stage to sing and is an absolute beast. Absolutely crushed this cover. Her take on Robert Plant is just outstanding, and she absolutely took over the stadium. I would love to see her back on stage with these guys. Iconic song. The backing band nailed it. Just terrific. What do you think, Mike?
Yeah, I would have not thought this was a possibility going into the shows, but I'm absolutely shocked to say that my second highlight from night one is this Cashmere. So my whole entire life, I've always said that if I could go back in time and see any artist, it would be Led Zeppelin. For reasons I'll never understand, Robert Plant and Jimmy Page just refused to play together, so I don't have the chance to see Led Zeppelin. But this is probably as close as I'm going to get. And yeah, to your point, I don't think that I ever thought there was anyone on the planet that could nail those vocals that perfectly. Every single ooh, every single ah, every single scream. She just absolutely killed it. And now she's on my short list of people that I've got to go catch, because you can't do Kashmir better than this.
No, this was outstanding, and another one that you can put on repeat and listen to over and over again and just be like, oh, what the hell did we witness? It's hard to capture the energy that was in the room just watching that, having your mind blown listening back. But man, that was cool. And right afterwards, again, another dunk tank, this time for Bruce Robinson. And this was much shorter this time, thankfully. But the guys wanted to get Bruce Robinson. handles some of the social stuff over on El Goose on Facebook and things like that. You might have seen him in the Hunger Site music video. So just funny to see him up there. Got dunked pretty much right away. All the guys up there trying to dunk him were just pushing on the button. They like didn't even really try. They just were like, "Screw it, we're just gonna push the button and dunk this guy immediately." And we get Into the Mist as the next ball. Any thoughts on this Into the Mist? It was kind of a shorter version than we'd seen lately, but pretty solid.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how you finish a show though with more energy than this. You've got the amazing Kashmir, which I just said was my second highlight from the night, and then an 18-minute mist, which it kind of forgoes what Into the Mist has been doing this year, which has been mostly known for like blissy ethereal spaces. I thought that that's what they would do again. They went a completely different way with it. It actually got super dancey at the end,
Mm-hmm.
not like as much as like creatures and things like that tend to get, but it certainly wasn't like a Cinderman from Cincy or anything like that, but very dancey for Mist. So it was cool to see it take like a different page. And it's kind of a theme of the weekend is that even with, jams under 20 minutes, they're taking chances and taking them to new places. So a lot of fun there.
Yeah, it definitely escaped from like its normal Mist trance that you get into early on with these Mist jams, and the disco fever took over. And Rick started kind of doing his rhythm guitar, funky, best Corey Wong impression is what the term I used, but just terrific stuff. And right after that, Big Modern gets pulled, and I was pumped. I like shrieked like a little schoolgirl on the floor. Like I was so excited for Arena Big Modern. Shorter version, a little truncated compared to what we've gotten. Might be the shortest version they played. I didn't look that up before we recorded here. And even though some people have been saying it's quote unquote the worst version of Big Modern, like it's still better than almost anything these guys play because I love this song. Hit a really nice peak about 12 minutes in. Again, the Southern rock vibes are strong. They got a little dancey with this one too. Any thoughts on this Big Modern to close out set two before the encore?
Yeah, I don't think it's the shortest. For some reason, I'm thinking there's like a 14 or 15-minute Big Modern out there. It's just escaping my mind what show that was. But either way, I mean, we got like almost 37 minutes of Into the Mist and Big Modern to close out a set. Like, that's absolutely awesome. And matter of fact, when they pulled Big Modern, I looked at my dad just knowing like how heavy Big Modern gets in its breakdown, and I was just like, well, I guess we're just going to burn Charleston to the ground because we had just come out of that huge dance party and missed the epic Kashmir. I mean, this end is just a furious finish to a show, and the solo work from Rick in this Big Modern was some of my favorite from the night. It was also some of my favorite Rick tone from the night because he shifted his tone to where it almost sounded like he was like firing lasers off from the guitar. It was so freaking cool. Definitely been listening back to this one a lot, and yeah, an amazing close to the show.
Yeah, great way to close a set. This song can go anywhere in a set as far as I'm concerned, and has just been shooting up my favorite songs that the Goose does. So I'll take any version of it, even if it's shorter than normal. If it's just a regular old jam, they don't really explore a lot of territory. I'm into it. So give me Big Modern every show. I don't care.
It's just a great song.
Yeah, terrific. And short encore break, and then we come right out. SOS gets pulled right away, and it's like, oh crap, this is already an encore song. Like, are they going to just do a one song encore? And you know, SOS doesn't really necessarily explore a lot of new places. It's a very kind of set song, but about halfway through them getting into Dawn, there they pull another ball, and it's Seekers, and you're like, oh man, how are they going to finish out the show on Seekers? Like, as great as we're fans of Seekers here, like, how are they going to close out a show on Seekers? And they figured it out. And they went right back into what's noted as Dawn. I got more of it's like SOS and Dawn both kind of closing out the show. But that makes total sense. They pulled the ball halfway through knowing that SOS is kind of a great way to close a show and that they could sandwich it back in no matter what was played afterwards. So I thought it was really smart on the guy's part to do it that way. Anyway, I'm yapping too much. What do you think, Mike?
No, you're good. That's I don't have a ton to add to it. I think you kind of nailed it there. But I think both sets of songs, like I guess like I'll call it a Seeker suite. I think like if either one had been in the encore on their own, like Seekers Part 1 and 2 or just SOS Dawn, I think you probably would have felt like okay, maybe it could have been a little bit better, but getting all of those together, I think it kind of raises the overall level of the encore.
Yeah, for sure. I think that that's a great way to put it. But any other thoughts on night one before we hop into night two? We're going long here already. This is going to be a megasode.
Well, Goosemas was epic, so you got to expect that. No, the only other thing I'll say before we move on to night two is that one thing that could have been a little bit better about night one is that when they were pulling the bingo balls, you couldn't always see the song. Like it, I don't know if like they knew where the cameras were to get it in focus, but that definitely improved on night two. So that was my only like negative note from all of night one was that I couldn't always see what song was getting pulled, but of course once they started playing anything, I could figure it out. So not a huge deal.
It was good some songs, and it just wasn't always consistent. They got it together night two a little bit better.
Agreed.
But that's a good way to segue into night two. So night two pre-show, there was a flow down at the Common House Ale Works in North Charleston from 12 to 4 p.m. Awesome event put on by Rising Tide Art Studios and Drifter Merch, and it was from 12 to 4. There was a ton of vendors there. There was like the Grateful Fred, Conceptual Groove, Fox and the Cobra, the hosts. Obviously, there was tons of stuff to buy. So many people were there. I thought it was just the biggest one I've seen yet for a Goose show, and just nice to see this community growing and the fan-made art scene blowing up for Goose. Just a terrific event. Had a chance to bump into Neil and Ryan Storm from AAT there, knowing I was going to record with them later, so we geeked out a little bit about night one, and then went over to record that episode of their post-show with them. Thanks for the collab, guys. Absolutely love what you do, echoing what Mike said. Thanks for having me on. I know you were having some quality family time that day, so I handled it. Hopefully I did okay. There was a lot of beverages had, so it was kind of chaotic, but very fun. Did you hear anything about the flow down?
I watched it. My co-host here absolutely killed it on AAT. I watch every AAT episode, and he was absolutely awesome. So yeah, no, I was just enjoying some lunch and hanging out in Charleston with my dad. I don't get to see him, but like once every blue moon. So, but I heard great things about the flow down, and obviously you kind of told me a little bit about all the great things that happened there and all the great people that were there. So again, just really happy to see the Goose community leveling up, just like the band is.
Yeah, I had the chance to meet a lot of awesome folks, hand out some stickers and ornaments from our podcast. Everyone was super nice. I know I'm forgetting people. I mean, Western Sun Foundation was there. Our friends at Flock Talk Again were there. Just the nicest group of people that you'll ever meet at one of these flow downs. Just a great time. I wish it could have been even longer, but just a great time. And I think that we need more of that in our community, of these kind of events, to just celebrate the different fans in the community and celebrate the art that can be made.
100%.
But getting into night two, the shows are the cream of the crop here. So we start off set one. Vibes are high coming off of night one, and everyone's anticipating some craziness because we kind of knew there was a lot of bonus balls left that we didn't know what they were, and we kind of knew what songs were still left on the table. We open up with Sirius again to start, and then we go right into Madhuvan, then get Born. A bonus ball comes up that winds up being slip sliding away. Then we pull one in, one out. We get the D and B and Flamingos ball, which we didn't know what it was at the time. We'll get into that. Then they pull the plus 14-minute jam right after the Flamingos ball. And then we pull Rockdale for set one. Insane set. Like, this is my favorite set, I think, of the weekend, set one. Where do we want to start here? I mean, Sirius to start. We talked about it a little bit from night one. Let's get into this Madhuvan a bit.
Yeah, so happy that they ran back Sirius. I kind of thought that that's what they were going to do because you can't beat it. So do it again, which was awesome. Starting with Madhuvan is absolutely crazy work. It was a really solid version of it, too. It wasn't like they trimmed it down to make it more suitable for an opening spot. They still treated it pretty much like Madhuvan, which was great. They had this cool little walk down that they were building primarily around that they peppered with like all means of spacey, airy sounds, had like an almost floating quality. And then they build it into this epic, slightly dark. It almost felt like an on the run chase scene from an 80s movie. It just had so much desperation and intensity. So much fun.
Yeah. This jam had some of the great two guitar goose we've been seeing this year. Peter stuck to that for the jam. And Peter's laying down this kind of scratchy texture that we saw a little bit of it like over the course of the year. The one that sticks out in my head is the half step from Atlanta. It was kind of similar tone wise to that Peter was laying down, and Rick's just tearing it up. But what really stood out to me here was also Trevor. He's always had such a great connection with Rick, but this year it's really leveled up. And we give Peter a lot of credit, but we got to give Trevor his due here. His ability to just provide the perfect counter melodies and fills in between what Rick's doing while also holding down the pocket is just something that should be celebrated more. And while this is a kind of shorter Madhuvan than we've gotten through the year, I think it was great, especially in the context of bingo and wanting to rip through a bunch of bingo balls and play as much as possible. But we go from this Madhuvan into Born, a song I had been chasing. I hadn't gotten it yet, and this was a short little guy. It was nice to hear it, though. I would have loved to see one of the epic 30-minute Born jams that we've been seeing, but really nice to hear the song. Any thoughts here?
No, always happy to hear Born, but yeah, it was very short, so I don't have a lot to add here. I probably knew in my heart that a 25-minute Born wasn't going to be on this night, but yeah, it's always nice to hear it.
Yeah, no, I wanted like a little baby jam, but that's okay. Now that we've kind of broken the seal and can check off that I've at least seen the song Born, hopefully I'll get another one soon.
Yeah.
But we go right into a bonus ball. Slip Sliding Away winds up being the song, and love to see the song. Just a great tune. Rick, his voice on this is absolutely perfect, and I think this would be a nice one to stick around as like a cool down song before a monster closer to a set or something. But what'd you think about this, Mike?
Yeah, huge Paul Simon fan, so excited to hear it. Definitely agree. It was beautifully done. It was a great rendition of the cover, and I would also like it to stick around, but I think this was probably one of the only other examples I have of just like unlucky ball placement. After, Born's a little bit slower, more emotional, and it was also a short version. So to get this cover after that, I think this is probably the one that I would maybe be most wanting to move somewhere else in the set, but glad to hear it for sure.
Yeah, the energy of it definitely fits like a later slot in a set or an encore or one slot or something like that, even where you start off slow and then you build into a monster song. But great to hear it. As Ryan was saying all weekend, the balls giveth and the balls taketh away. So
accurate.
But great stuff. And then we pull 1 in 1 out right afterwards. And this ball gets pulled during Slip Sliding Away and after Born. You're like, okay, this is kind of like a very chill run. But this 1 in 1 out hit, dude. And this song's been growing on me since it debuted in Boston. But man, it just was the start of an insane end to the set one. I was thinking about like what the highlight of the show might be, and we're gonna get into this run now, but Goose wound up releasing on their YouTube the entire end of set one from this song through the end because it's just absolute madness. Peter's doing his thing on this. It doesn't really veer off of the main themes of 1 in 1 out, but it just kind of builds into a great triumphant closing peak. But just always love when Peter hops on the marimba and then he kind of takes over this jam and he's kind of driving the whole thing, in my opinion. He goes from marimba to these punchy keys, allows Rick to kind of take off with his ascending, triumphant, soaring soloing. And yeah, any thoughts on this 1 in 1 out before we talk about Lucky Lou and his madness after this?
Yeah, you and I were chatting a bit about how much of a monster this 1 in 1 out is on Friday night. And, it's not the longest song by any means, but again, just being very economical, getting the most out of the time that they do have. And it was like, what stuck out to me about this 1 in 1 out was just, it was Rhythm City between Cotter and Peter. He's obviously used the marimba and the percussive nature of the keys a lot this year, but I found recently, and especially at Goosemas, he was starting to even use like different settings for keys as rhythmic piano and as like a rhythmic element to the song. And I think that's really great as far as like punching up where these jams go to. And it had a glorious finale, like you said. So yeah, 1 in 1 out is growing into quite a jam vehicle.
Yeah, and knowing that it was derived from jamming out on the TED tapes, and that it's become just kind of its own monster of a jam vehicle, even though they're kind of shorter. I don't think this was the best version they've done, but it was just really outstanding, and it just really hit in a spot where you might think that, oh, we're going to get another chill jam here. It just really was a nice groove and built into this great peak that wound up leading to Flamingo's madness. So the ball got drawn. People had been speculating from their bingo boards, what the hell is D&B and Flamingos? And 2 inflatable flamingos come flying out from side stage, and the crowd immediately starts pushing them towards the back. Everyone's kind of doing the beach ball thing with them, and Cotter gets on the mic, like, wait a second, bring those back up front, we need them. And he starts explaining to the crowd what's about to happen. Peter and Rick are about to hop on the flamingos, and he says, quote, they will ride across your heads and do battle. And in the moment, it was awesome to see the guys up there. Peter was kind of graceful up there on the flamingo. Rick was just kind of flailing around the whole time. But it was just great to see the two guys having a great time up there, giving each other fist bumps, throwing the fist in the air. Really hard to focus on what was going on stage while they were riding the flamingos because it's just so entertaining and definitely like the iconic photo and moment of the weekend in terms of the gimmicks and just all the bingo vibes. But yeah, just a really great groove to this. Actually kind of sick groove when you think about it. But yeah, what'd you think about DMB and flamingos?
It was life changing. Absolutely one of my favorite things I've ever seen. I just could not believe that they were doing it in real time. The music behind it was like you said, really cool, like a very iconic and distinguished riff that it was, feeding off of. But yeah, just like to see them like actually do that was just so hysterical and so unexpected. And I can't remember which one of the numerous amazing meme pages that we follow that shared it, but the best thing I saw all week was imagine hating on Goose and they're just out here riding around on inflatable flamingos. Like, I can't say it any better than that. It was so much fun, and they are so awesome for doing that.
Yeah, just outstanding. And anyone who knows us knows that we have an affinity for flamingos. So just to see the guys on inflatable flamingos, like there's like literally 7 flamingos within eye shot of me sitting here in the house. It's just kind of become our tradition at concerts to wear flamingo stuff, and people gift us flamingo related stuff. And just, I don't know how that's become a thing, but it's a thing.
It came full circle.
Came full circle, absolutely. Kind of failed to mention during geeking out about all this that it was a drum and bass groove. It was all Trevor driven. Really need to start the movement to give Trevor more solo time because this groove, like I said, was sick. And after a few minutes of riding, Rick and Pete hop back up on stage, and Rick just starts taking this groove through the roof. And Lucky Lou comes out and draws the plus 14-minute jam ball to tack onto the Flamingos jam. And this is why I think this is a contender for Jam of the Year for me. Really, really cool stuff here. I want to hear your thoughts on this jam that they added onto the Flamingos before I geek out.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. It was absolutely outstanding. I don't know. I'm going to have to probably spend another week with all of these before I figure out what does and doesn't qualify for Jam of the Year status. But it was really intense, and the playing was super together. The darkness gave way to like an incredible bliss split build, which I kind of felt like the tone they had set with the flamingo groove and then moving into this jam, I thought we were just going to be dark all the way. So they definitely caught me off guard when they shifted into the bliss mode. But when they finish, it's like burn a hole in your socks dance party. So this one did a lot. Again, I'm going to keep saying it, being very economical with their time. They're getting a lot out of, 10 to 15 minute windows of time here.
Yeah, I think all of it in tandem, and I think that the way that they're going to qualify this as Jam of the Year is going to include the Flamingos with it. So it's like all of it together. That's why I think it's outstanding. Super unexpected to pull this. You think it'd come after just a regular old Goose song, but to have to force the guys to jam and do like some TED tape style improv here was really just the best. Wow, we just start off on that slow turning groove, like you said. Again, Pete on the marimba, always a good time. And other hand, he's kind of doing this ascending and descending siren to create this like tension and darkness. And that's when Rick just kind of takes over and takes us into dark metal Goose territory, getting the face vibes from Big Modern a little bit. Punchy power chords. Peter starts tickling the keys in between the shots that Rick's taking. And then all of a sudden, the band just kind of emerges from the darkness into this glorious bliss, ethereal space. And this is why I'm surprised that you're not raving about this. It kind of reminded me of the Cat version of Tumble you love so much, the center section where you're just kind of like, this is the best. It was almost like a flamingo that was flying through a dark storm and just emerged into sunny skies.
You may have just talked me into it, honestly, man. Like you may have like just won me over completely because you're totally right. And to get 3 different sections out of 14 minutes, like, that's crazy for a jam. And with, Trevor and Cotter having to hold all of this down, and then for Rick and Peter to have to reintegrate themselves from literally coming out of the audience to back on stage and getting this, it probably was great for us, the fans, but for them as musicians, I hadn't really thought about it. It's probably unlucky them pulling the 14-minute jam because that requires a lot of coordination to kind of keep that all going, but they aced it. So you may have just won me over right there and then.
Yeah, and they were having so much fun. They ended with that speed funk portion you mentioned, and it was so much fun. The plus 14-minute jam wound up being a 16-minute jam. It was you would think like they'd be like watch the clock, like
totally.
How the hell do we get out of this? Like this is not ideal. We were not expecting to jam on D&B and Flamingos, but they just crushed it. And then another ball gets pulled, and we get Rockdale, dude. And talking about compact jams, this one totally would have been like up there, 2-3 seed at least for Jam of the Year if this was 5 or 10 minutes longer. Just an insane version of Rockdale. Well, let's hear your thoughts, Mike.
Yeah, I'll keep it pretty succinct because I've just been talking your ear off today, but it's awesome for a set one closer. I always love Rockdale. This started a little bit kind of like proggy, distorted, in the first phase, but it went full on into Dark Goose. And I totally agree. If it was like, at the 20-minute mark or more, I think a lot more people would be talking about it because it's a really good example of like what the best of Dark Goose can look like.
Just terrific. I don't have enough words to talk about how much I can appreciate a jam that explores this much space, even though it's short. Like you get really like 8 minutes of jamming in this, and the territory they covered, they just kind of hit the ground running. Peter was really doing his thing the entire time. Again, just continuing to drive the jams ever since One In, One Out, I feel like, while the rest of the band grooved around him. Those like reverby, delay chirps he was doing, and just hearing Trevor and Rick kind of just surround him with just texture. Usually it's the opposite, I feel like. It was just great. And another gorgeous ethereal space on this one, I think they hit right after Flamingos. Really uneasy ascending motif that just built and built. It almost felt like it was something you'd expect to hear after a Factory Fiction or something, honestly. But for about a 15-minute jam, I think this is as good as it gets. Again, I wish that if they were going to play this, it was in a different part of the set sometimes, because this could have been another 10, 15 minutes and people would have been like, this is easily Jam of the Year.
Yeah, it could have worked really well. Like the end of set 2 before the encore, that could have been a really great spot if it had worked out. But, like you said, Ryan said earlier, the balls giveth and the balls taketh away. But I think, like you said, though, for it to be as long as it was 16 and change or whatever, a lot got done. And it was a new version of Rockdale at a bare minimum. So
Yeah.
really great stuff.
And Rockdale, this isn't the first time it's been a compact jam like this that we've raved about. They've been really doing some killer stuff on Rockdale, starting in the fall especially, I want to say. These shorter versions, they're just crushing them. So as much as I want to get a 30-minuter, I'll take 15.
For sure.
All right. So any thoughts on set 1 before we start hopping into set 2?
No. While you may think that set 1 was your favorite of the weekend, I think we're about to get into my favorite set of the weekend. So I cannot wait to talk about it. It's insanity.
Hey, no, that's totally fair. It's really all great. I think in terms of vibes and songs and jams and everything, this was like the best show. Like, I don't care if anyone thinks I'm hasty for saying it.
Best show ever.
It's like the perfect balance of everything you want out of Goose. But let's get into set 2. Start off with an All I Need. Again, the ball's very generous with the slotting here. Like, you get an opener for a set opener. Going into Creatures, into the Empress of Organos, into a bonus ball, which was Don't Leave Me This Way by Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes. Bonus ball 2, it was. And then we get bonus ball number 3 right afterwards, Get Down Tonight by Casey and the Sunshine Band. Vibes are through the roof. Then we get an Atlas Dogs, into Echo of a Rose, into Money Ready, which we didn't know what that was going into bingo, but it wound up being Slow Ready into So Ready, back into Slow Ready. Where do we start here? How about you take us through All I Need into Creatures here, Mike?
Yeah, not a lot to say about All I Need. It's great every time, but this one was about as short as I've ever heard it live. Creatures, though, was absolutely outstanding. Immediately heavy synth work from Peter turns this into a dance party that you'd swear is from the Tron soundtrack by Daft Punk. It was just totally those vibes. And, That's a dance party that I think is up there for me, like with the Cinnamon from Cincy, and You Spin Me Round has had like a couple moments like that. All these new like electronic sounds that we've been talking about that Peter's been bringing jams to are all present in this Creatures. So that one's been getting a lot of replay spins for sure.
One of the shortest versions of All I Need, I think, of all time that wasn't just like a reprise or something that was like thrown into a sandwich or whatever. But this Creatures, they pulled the ball to get the transition going right out of All I Need. Extended intro on this Creatures, outstanding stuff. Easily the hardest I saw the venue dancing all weekend was this Creatures. And it was two guitar goose basically the whole way on this peak and outro of Creatures 2, which is rarer than you'd think on Creatures. Absolutely blew the roof off the place. We posted a clip of that on our socials. One of the highlights of the weekend, even if it wasn't necessarily like a jam of the year, super unique. It was just, again, we're vibes guys, so vibes through the roof on this one. And seeing the crowd erupt and dance like that was just, how could you not smile and boogie yourself through this thing?
Goose is the most fun band on the planet right now. So if you need any evidence of that, go listen to that Creatures. Because if you don't want to tap your foot or dance a little bit to that, you might not have a soul.
Don't tell the fans that, the PH fans or the Creed and Nickelback fans that, but I agree. But we go right out of Creatures and we pull Empress of Organos. Get a short version of this as well. Not really a ton of jamming. We get the fun claps from Pete and the crowd-led claps, and they really wanted to try to pull as many bingo balls here in set 2. So any thoughts on this short Empress before we kind of start pulling more bingo balls?
No, I'll just say that this Empress into the two songs that come after it, to me, it's not my favorite part of the weekend, but I think it's the most fun part of the weekend is this little 3-song run right here.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I was disappointed that Empress was shortened a little bit, but I also had in the back of my mind, since it's maybe been the most sandwich song this year, that I may see my friend Empress again later in the show, which we'll see if we do.
And we do. Spoiler alert.
And we did.
But we pull a ball right after a minute or so of jamming on this, I want to say, and we get a bonus ball too, like I said, Don't Leave Me This Way. And I think that this might be up there for the cover of the weekend, depending on who you ask. It's grown on me. Initially I would have said a different suite of songs as my favorite covers, but this jam rules. Do you have any thoughts on this Don't Leave Me This Way, Mike?
Yes, I'm going to talk about them together because for me, they kind of go together, but it goes Empress, Don't Leave Me This Way, Get Down Tonight. This is my favorite, like, fun moment of the show. And I think that this is where the balls, I think, really helped Goose out a lot, because getting the two disco era songs back to back, I think worked incredibly well, because obviously Empress is a ton of fun. And then when you get Don't Leave Me This Way and Get Down Tonight, you've got like 3 just kind of dance vibe party songs right back to back. Wasn't expecting to hear Don't Leave Me This Way for sure. Definitely wasn't expecting to hear Get Down Tonight, but perfectly chosen covers. The band executes them really, really well. Surpassed my expectations for what they could do with these type of songs. And Rick's voice sounds absolutely amazing on them, which is, I mean, this is kind of a different style of music from what we heard the rest of the weekend. So yeah, they just aced this assignment for me.
Yeah. The dance party continued from Creatures for sure during this run here. And I think it was just the peak of energy and vibes. And I don't think I saw a single person sitting or standing still during this run. I forgot to mention the guy in the Grinch costume who I saw, who was like, just like clearly tripping, but like vibing hard. And I bet that guy was moving and grooving during this run. So
yeah, everyone was dancing during this section. The whole arena was just like completely lit.
Yeah. Yep. And you forgot to mention, even Lucky Lou hopped on percussion here during this run, which was really fun to see. Got to put that in the show notes next time. Asterisk Lucky Lou on percussion. Official 7th member of the band behind Getty.
Yeah, that was really cool to see him jump up on there, because I think Jeff was on guitar for part of it, so they had like enough space to operate, but like him just leaned over the percussion kit was just hilarity.
And that's worth shouting out. We haven't shouted out Jeff enough, I feel like, this podcast, but he was really cranked up this weekend. You could hear him quite a bit. He gets a lot of flack from people, but I thought he was adding a lot this Goosemas.
Thank you for keeping me honest and reminding me to mention that, because that was on my brain as well. But obviously, this weekend has so much to talk about. It's hard to remember to get to everything. But I definitely felt like one of my big takeaways from that weekend was that every time Jeff picked up a guitar, his purpose was extremely intentional. And I think he's figuring out a lot more about both when he should bring a guitar out and start playing, and also like what he should add to songs, when they're arranged that way. So, we've said it a million times, but everyone in this band keeps leveling up, and he's no exception.
Yeah, I love to see it. And when there was 3 guitar goose moments over the weekend, he crushed it. Like, I think he added a lot. And for a guy who gets a lot of flack from people on the cesspools of X and Reddit, I want to shout out and say we're Team Jeb. College.
100%. And it's advantageous to have someone that plays as many instruments as he does in the band, because he can fill so many roles and he does all of them really well. So love Jeff.
Yep. Yep. And the funk party had to end sometime. Still got a great run here to close out the set too. We pull Atlas Dogs next after a hard stop after Get Down Tonight. Needed a second to catch a breath. And it's Atlas Dogs. It's the original version, not the indie groove version. And it looked like they weren't going to jam it out, but they wound up kind of jamming it out a little bit because they pulled a ball for Echo of a Rose, and it made for a really cool transition here. Thoughts on this Atlas Dogs going into Echo?
Yeah, Atlas is kind of a little bit like Turbulence for me. I never am going in like having that really high up my wish list, but always very happy to hear it. And I thought that maybe the indie groove version would have worked better here, just coming out of the highs of the disco dance party. Maybe we could have slowed it down just a little bit more, but still very happy with this version. But the short echo, I have to admit, did disappoint me a little bit.
Yeah, I haven't confirmed this myself, but I had heard somewhere this is the shortest Echo of all time. Very, very short. Clearly, they wanted to pull balls, and they pulled a great closer here. They pulled Money Ready right afterwards. The speculation was through the roof. Was wearing the Slow Ready jackets we had made, and everyone around us was like, "Oh my God, what is this gonna be?" And we start off on Slow Ready, and the hugs were everywhere. Absolutely love Slow Ready. And after the first chorus, we kind of get a sweeping chord by Rick. He looks over at the rest of the band members, and he's like, "Let's do it." And they start going into So Ready, getting into the funk again. Finish out the main portion of the song on So Ready, which I think is just a great balance there. And then the jam, the arpeggiator comes on, and we finish with Slow Ready Jam, which is kind of the best of both worlds, in my opinion. As much as I love Satellite, I thought maybe they would go back into that too, somewhere in the Slow Ready Jam. Maybe that was in the plans. I don't know. It sounded like there were points where they could have taken that avenue, but they were just feeling the Slow Ready Jam. But again, I'm gushing. Any thoughts on this Money Ready?
Yeah, part of me wants to say that this is the version of So or Slow that I want to hear every time. But then again, I also said that after Goosemas last year when we did song So Ready into the jam for Slow Ready. So at this point, I think I'm more comfortable saying, Goose, you just keep experimenting with this as much as you want. Maybe sometime a year from now, we'll have one where it's like so slow, so slow, so I don't know. Like they could do anything with this at this point, but I do think this is the best way to hear it, at least to this point. I think So Ready is a better song, but I definitely prefer the Slow Ready jam as opposed to like the satellite style jams. So I'm totally with you there, 100%. But to get this many aspects of both of them, I think like, they may perfect this further, but it'll probably be hard to beat this.
Mike, you can't say that on the Slow Ready podcast. You can't be saying So Ready's better. We're team. Well, now we're Team Money.
I said the song is better, but the jam, which as you and I both know is far more important than the song, I say I prefer Slow Ready. So I think I'm still aligned here. I don't know.
We got to reevaluate. Performance reviews are coming up. We'll talk about it.
End of the year stuff. Okay.
No, the rebrand has to come for Money Ready. I guess we're gonna have to change our logo to a giant bag of money or something and put a ready under it.
Oh God.
But just an awesome way to close the set. Again, the ball's very generous here. I think they had the list of what was left, and looking through kind of what people had put together, I had kind of pulled that together through this point of the show as well. And there was just a lot of great options where you couldn't go wrong for a high energy way to close a set. So I think they just knew they needed to pull something real quick after that Echo of a Rose to kind of come off on one of the songs they wanted to finish the set with. And we kind of got a long encore break here. It ended much earlier, the set 2, than it did on night 1, but it made for a very long encore. And then Pete came out with the rest of the band, had a sheet of paper with about 50 people he needed to thank, which was awesome. A production like this Goosemas requires a lot of effort, and really nice to see the band be so grateful and make sure they shouted out as many folks who made this possible as they could. And they announced they're going to pull one more bingo ball, and then they were going to play what they wanted to after this. So I think this was kind of the catch-all section for the songs that they had rehearsed that they really wanted to play. For instance, if they hadn't played Kashmir with Nico on night 1, allegedly, like, she was just on call to be there for the encore part of night 2, and they just play it together in this portion of the show. But they pull the ball, and we get Dripfield, which is where I heard the most conspiracy theories about the show being rigged. But real quick before we dive into it, I just want to shout out, we had kind of run a quick look at what bingo balls were left at this point. And you might think, like, oh my gosh, like, how could they pull the perfect song here? What was left at this point was Dripfield, Animal, Arrow, Draconian Meter Maid, Drive, Feel It Now, Hot Tea, Redbird, Salt, Thatch, and Tumble. And I feel like at least over half of those, and if you include Dripfield in there, are like perfect encore songs, or like a way that's like totally acceptable to close a show. So it was like, you're going to get the conspiracy theorists regardless of what was pulled, unless it was like Draconian or something. So anyway, any thoughts on that before we get into this, Mike?
No, yeah. I mean, I definitely don't believe that the show was rigged. There are way too many examples of songs where I just know that the band would not have put them there if they were, structuring this the way they wanted.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, this worked out perfectly.
Agree. But Dripfield, man. Oh my gosh. Dripfield Encore. Dude. Place went nuts. Let's hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I have to say, like, all those songs you listed are great, so it would have worked out well for us either way. But like I said, being that this was my dad's first Goose shows and first jam band shows, I personally am of the opinion that Dripfield is the greatest, like, transportive experience that Goose can offer you in a live setting. I just feel like it's like Silver Rising. It seems like it exists a more epic scale than the rest of their catalog. So definitely super stoked to get Dripfield in the encore slot. I was worried I was going to leave the weekend without getting it. So yeah, hats off to Goose. The balls really helped us out there at the end.
Yeah, and to your point, I think I was with my wife. I looked over at her during this, and it was her first Dripfield. And I was like, this is kind of Goose's signature sound, in my opinion. Like, you're going to have your mind blown. And blown it was. Even though it was a short version of Dripfield, they knew this was the perfect pivot song to take this into the Marball, which was a mystery. Everyone was calling it the Matter Ball because it was the ampersand, or what's that thing called? The @ symbol from the emails.
Yeah, I think you almost had ampersand. I think that's what
I think
it is.
ampersand is the and, right?
Oh, okay, gotcha.
We sound
we're
dumb.
Idiots, so don't listen to us.
It's the @ symbol, like when you do your email on the ball. Everyone's calling it the Matter Ball, but it wound up just being Marball. And Trevor walks off stage, and you're like, what's going on? They start pushing out like a rig. I thought it was a set of keys we were kind of far back on night 2, right by the soundboard. I was like, oh my God, are these keys? Is this going to be like Matt Campbell on the keys or something? They're bringing out a guest. Why is Trevor like helping out with pushing out equipment or whatever? No, it's DJ Marv Menthols. We get the announcement officially in Comic Sans up on the displays at the venue, flashing. DJ Marv Menthols is here. He's got the iconic outfit on, even though he's still got the curls. And we get an absolute dance party. We're in the club, Raven. And I thought it was just like perfect out of Dripfield. What'd you think about this?
So this was like the only thing that I thought that I knew going in. I saw the Marball and I was like, well, that's got to be DJ Marlboro. So I told my dad that I was pretty confident that we were going to get that throughout the weekend. So I'm super glad that I finally got to see DJ Marlboro in the flesh. It was absolutely epic. And like you said, it was basically Club Goose at that point.
Yeah, I think this is something that they could like sprinkle in like they do with Trev playing Achy Breaky Heart. I think this would be so fun as like a special thing they do at shows every now and then.
Definitely.
And I mean, at a Dripfield, it was like perfect. Like I don't think you could have picked a better place to put it. Great stuff. I was sending it to all our friends who were like not sold on Goose, but like going clubbing and stuff. It was like, Oh my god, every Goose show is just like this. You got to come with me, even though I was totally lying.
Oh man, that's great.
Getty was going nuts on the lights. It really was like a club vibe in there, and I'd love to see it. More DJ Marb Menthols, please.
More Trevor everything. Bring back reading poetry. Bring back all of it. Trevor's the man.
Yep, yep. And then the party had to end sometime, but not in the way you think. We got a different kind of party. Rick looks back into his talkback mic, and the band busts out into the Holy Triumvirate. Some great Dead covers. Got Help on the Way to start, into Slipknot, into Franklin's Tower, and they close that out with the sandwich you had mentioned. Not quite a sandwich, but transition into Empress of Organos to kind of take Franklin's Tower out. Absolutely epic. I mean, we know Blues for Allah came out in 1975, so it makes total sense. These were some of the covers. This would have been bonus ball number 1, apparently. Oh, real quick, I want to backtrack for 1 second. Forgot to mention, during the Marball, t-shirt cannons came out. Had Lucky Lou firing off these amazing t-shirts. I don't know if you had a chance to see some of them. They were so tacky.
I did not.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, great.
I gotta find more pictures, but it was like really poorly screen printed t-shirts with like really funny shit on them. So one of them was a picture of Trevor in his Mountain Dew shirt, and it said it said I stumble every time you do it, with like the Mountain Dew spelling. Like it was just like funny shit, like nothing serious. So
oh my god.
If you got
Wow.
t-shirts and you have a picture, please send them to us, because I want to kind of catalog all of the shirts that they did, because they're outstanding.
Oh my god. Amazing.
And like I think I saw one where it was like, it wasn't even like they didn't even try to print these things well. It was like crooked and just like on the shirt. Like they're just for fun.
So good.
So good. But getting back into the Dead covers, Help on the Way, like, and Slipknot and Franklin's, but really Help on the Way into Slipknot. These guys, after having to practice that stupid, insane riff on this song, like especially Rick and Trev, and such a bitch to play that riff on guitar. They had to play this after that. So great run. They didn't really explore a lot on these necessarily. They just kind of wanted to play the covers, and they crushed them. I think this needs to come back for sure, where they can jam out a little bit more. But what you think about this run, Mike?
Life-changing, epic, all of the above. I mean, it was absolutely outstanding. I think Help and Frank are probably both in my top 5 Dead songs. So, just to get Help Slip Frank, I mean, it was just absolutely incredible. So well played. Help on the Way is so hard to play on guitar. Obviously, it's no big deal to Rick because he's the absolute man. But yeah, and just so awesome. Obviously, throughout the whole weekend and at most Goose shows, you're going to see a lot of older Deadheads, wearing their gear and their patches and stuff like that. So it was also really cool just from the perspective of like seeing a bunch of people that have been on the bus for a long time, so to speak, get that moment. It clearly meant the world to the whole arena. So I just feel super lucky and blessed to be able to share in that with the whole Goose community, because we'll be talking about this for years.
Yeah, to hear the Dead run is just the best thing ever. Obviously, seeing Blues from Allah as a 1975 album before this, we kind of knew that maybe this was coming, especially with Rick playing at Dead Ahead, with celebrating the Dead down in Mexico here soon. He had been getting his practice in, so I thought it was terrific. One of the loudest cheers of the weekend as well when Help started. So just want to shout this run out. I think this needs to stick around. I would love to see the band explore this and jam out a little bit more in the future. Trying to squeeze this in an encore slot when it wasn't drawn all weekend. These guys seemed very excited to play this. There had been rumors flying around that Franklin's Tower had been sound checked to start the weekend, which was very hard to keep as a spoiler from you, Mike. But just terrific stuff. I think that I would love to see this at any show. Some of my favorite Dead tunes, so amazing. And then the kind of swerve Franks back into Empress, outstanding. And make sure you end the show on one of your best encore songs and have the crowd dance in again. Is just great work by the band, and this is the best band on earth right now.
Yeah, thank you for not spoiling that for me. I really much appreciate it, because I will definitely remember for the rest of my life the first time I got to roll away the dew with Goose. So that was what an epic way to close out the weekend. And I totally agree. Like it would have been a crime against humanity if they didn't actually end the encore and the show with something that's typical and emblematic of Goose's sound. So circling back to Empress to put, a final cherry on top was just, could we have asked for a better weekend? I don't think so. This is the best band, like you said, on the planet Earth right now. And 2025 just got a lot more exciting.
It sure did. So, anything else on this encore before we kind of wrap a bow on Goosemas 2024?
I think we maybe have talked their ear off at this point, but if you've got something else to call out, I mean, I'm just going to keep saying it. This is the best concerts I've ever been to, the best weekend of concerts I've ever been to, the best concert experience and theme that I've ever been a part of. It just, they went so far above and beyond to deliver for us a amazing magical weekend. And if you didn't get a chance to go or you've never been to your first Goosemas, I'll tell you what I tell everyone else. It's the most important dates on my calendar. So I'm already, where are we going to be in 2025? What venue, what city, where are we going? Because I'm going to be there.
Yeah, not much else to add. Just want to kind of go high level here. And I know I've seen my critiques of Goosemas online, managing all the social stuff, mostly from people who weren't there, which is fine. You get an opinion too. But I think it's easy to lose sight of that these are supposed to be like themed fun shows, kind of like Halloween was. Jamming isn't the priority necessarily. And I thought it struck a good balance of getting the bingo tour vibes. They obviously catered the songs to mostly land on their powerhouse tunes that are their originals. They didn't want to get into a run like you might have seen during the bingo tour of like this set is 60% cover songs. And, you know, as fun as that would be, I think they wanted to make sure they highlighted their songs in this, add a few gimmick balls, add a few surprises. I really liked the concept of 1975 and getting the game show and getting the covers from that year. As much fun as it would be to expand that repertoire to like more of their, high powered covers that the fans love, I think that adding the sprinkle of surprises in was perfect. Making sure they played a few of the songs they wanted to play and their gimmick balls in the encore night two is the perfect balance to make sure that you kind of get a little bit of everything. And yeah, I just thought it was the best balance between great energy in the venue, great stuff on stage, and then a sprinkle of improvisation and unique stuff that you wouldn't get out of these songs normally to kind of make for the perfect weekend. Yeah, everything was perfect between the band, Getty, the staff at the venue. I just thought it was all handled terrifically, and I think that this North Charleston Coliseum was a terrific place to have Goosemas if they want to do it there again in the future. I thought it was just really well handled and a great spot.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I hadn't thought about some of the stuff that you just said, but like maybe that's just because we kind of go into Goosemas eyes wide open, knowing that it's going to be a little bit of a different focus. Like if improv is your number one thing, like you can just go see Goose on tour anytime. Like if a 4-song second set or a 3-song second set is what you're looking for, hey, just go see them on tour at any regular concert. It's more times than not what you're going to get. But for this, the focus is kind of on balancing. But even all that being said, even though it's a little bit more oriented towards having fun, we still got the best Arcadia in years. The Hunger Site is a Jam of the Year candidate, and I think Creatures is one of the danciest jams I've heard all year. So I mean, there was plenty of improv to go around too. So just a perfect weekend.
Don't forget Flamingo is plus 14. That's
Yeah, plus
outstanding.
that on its own is just completely new ground for them and the greatest gimmick that they've done so far. So yeah, just I have no complaints. 10 out of 10.
Yeah, just the best. And breaking news, I didn't put this in the hot tea section because it should have been obviously the biggest news of the week. We had talked about it on an earlier episode, but my wife was so pumped after Goosemas. She was like, forget my 40th birthday being a thing at home. We're going to Milwaukee and celebrating my birthday and our anniversary up there
Yes.
in the cold. We'll be there for night 2 and night 3. Can't make night 1, unfortunately. Just tough with school drop off and all that stuff to do Thursday as well. But we'll be there Friday. We'll be there Saturday, and it'll be a great time. And riding that Goosemas high, baby.
Yep, I will also be there. And when he told me that they were coming, one of the best news I got this week. So Super, super happy about this. And yeah, looking forward to these February dates. Can't wait to see where Goose is at that point. Probably grown even 1,000 times more by then.
Yep. So it's the holiday season. We're going to be releasing this episode just before Christmas and Hanukkah and Kwanzaa. So we have some New Year's
All of
Eve
them.
shows to look forward to. Yeah. And I think that we're going to have a really fun time with these New Year's shows, but then also kind of recapping the year here shortly in the future. But we're just happy to be back here after a long kind of hiatus. We took some breaks for the holidays and, just Goosemas was madness. So it's nice to be back and recording again and want to make sure that we wish all of you a happy holidays, however you celebrate. Hope it's a safe and wonderful time with family and friends. And make sure that if you want to keep up with us, we'll be trying to release as much stuff between now and the end of the year, highlighting all the madness of 2024 on our socials at Slow Ready Pod. If you're chatting on there, we love to say hello. If you have thoughts on any shows, especially Goosemas and New Year's right now, we'd love to hear them. Gotten a few lovely emails and messages over the last week or so, just shouting out the thoughts on the shows and shouting out the podcast. So we always love to hear from you. Yeah. Anything else you want to say, Mike?
Nailed it. Thankful for so many of you and hope you all have a great holiday. And yeah, we've been a little bit sparse as far as being around the last couple of weeks because it's a crazy time of year. But we're only like 10 days away from getting into 2025, and can't wait to get into everything in this new year with you all and keep this journey going. So it's so awesome to hear from you all. So we love doing this, and yeah, can't wait for what's to come.
Cannot wait. Been lucky enough to meet so many of you already. Can't wait to meet so many more of you. Merry Goosemas, everybody.
Merry Goosemas.
And we'll see you next time on the Slow Ready Podcast. Take care.